Hi, this video is going to be looking at cell structures. We're going to be looking at human and animal cells and also plant cells. The human body is made up of millions of cells. There are hundreds of different types of cells in the human body. All of the different types of cells in the human body have a different structure to them, and it's the different structures that allow the cells to carry out their specific function or their specific role. However, despite these differences in the structure of the cell, most human and animal cells contain the same components. We are going to be looking at a typical human/animal cell to see what components we would expect to find there. However, there is no such thing as a typical human or animal cell because humans and animals are made up of hundreds of different types of cells. Examples of human cells are blood cells, both white and red blood cells, bone cells, nerve cells, muscle cells, and there are many more cells in the human body. We can see the structure of cells by looking at a cell through a microscope. However, we cannot use a normal microscope and instead have to use a light microscope or an electron microscope. So let's have a look at a typical cell. A typical cell will have all of the following components. The first component is the nucleus. The nucleus contains the genetic information for the cell. It contains this genetic information through 46 chromosomes in humans. Chromosomes are made up of genes, and genes control the activities that occur in a cell, such as what proteins or enzymes the cell should make. The next component of a typical human or animal cell is the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is a gel-like substance that makes up most of the cell. It is made up from many different substances, and it is where most of the chemical reactions in the cell occur. Cells also have a cell membrane. The cell membrane is the outside of the cell. It provides a boundary between the cytoplasm and the outside. The cell membrane also decides which substances come in and out of a cell, and it's partially permeable, which means that some substances can pass through it and other substances are unable to pass through it. Human and animal cells also have mitochondria. These are found in the cytoplasm of all living cells. They are responsible for some of the chemical reactions that take place in respiration, and respiration releases energy that the cell can use. Cells that require a lot of energy have a lot of mitochondria in them. The final component that a typical human or animal cell has is ribosomes. The endoplasmic reticulum is covered by ribosomes, and ribosomes are responsible for assembling proteins that the cell needs. So that's a typical human or animal cell looked at. Now let's have a look at a typical plant cell. A typical plant cell has all of the components that a human or animal cell has, and they also have some more. One of the additional components that a typical plant cell has is a rigid cell wall. The cell wall is found on the outside of the cell membrane. It is there to strengthen the cell and support its shape. The cell wall is made from cellulose, which is a carbohydrate. A typical plant cell also contains chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are responsible for photosynthesis in a plant. They absorb light energy to make food. They also contain a pigment which is called chlorophyll, and this makes the plant green. A typical plant cell also has a permanent vacuole hole. A vacuole hole is a relatively large space that is surrounded by a membrane. It contains cell sap, which is a weak solution of sugar, salts, and minerals. Some animal cells do have a vacuole hole, but they are only temporary. A vacuole hole in a plant cell is a permanent feature of that cell. So a typical plant cell has these three additional features: a rigid cell wall, chloroplast, and a permanent vacuole hole. They also have all of the other components that a human and animal cell has. So they have a nucleus, a cytoplasm, a cell membrane, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, and ribosomes. So that brings us to the end of this video. For more content, quizzes and past papers, go on to www.elevise.co.uk.